Yeah, I think Daniel had 3.
Yeah, I had 3 previously, now I'm going back, trying to make it better.
Maybe I should have left the marshmallows.
Better is
freeze.
the enemy of good. Hates the angel hair. Hates it forever.
Yeah, I really didn't think about thin spaghetti versus any other kind.
Well, you don't until you do it sometimes. Until you do, you know.
Maybe whole wheat would have been better.
This is whole wheat.
I don't know
Whole wheat
about
is
that.
softer, I think.
Yeah, or grainy, or maybe it's not.
No, when I was 3 and I tried eating raw spaghetti, I think it was harder than this. Get crushes on this. Flying bushes.
It was in everyone.
Teach.
Okay, engineering does that.
So you can have that.
Yeah, because
I can give you this too.
Well,
This has the last part.
Did you
It's slowly.
did you file that?
I have it on the computer.
Okay. What you can do is if you can just kind of put, what I want to do is put this together so that we can, if somebody comes
Compile
like, yeah, you pull that. You just get it to me in a week or so. And that way.
Yeah, it's mostly filled out.
Yeah. You can say, do the best you can, so somebody can run with it. I'm not necessarily crazy about the format, but it's something that you guys already use, and I don't want you to have to, have another source to draw from. So if you want to do that, then just get me a folder that you put your name on it. And then, like I said, we'll just continue at the end, everybody will have a big old binder. And if there's any other like resources, website, anything like that, there's some software, there's some structural software that's out there too, software. It could be kind of a support activity or something, where you're in an introductory deal.
Yeah, it looks like the bigger the base.
How are you gonna assess what we did?
Well, we're gonna come together.
Okay.
We're gonna discuss.
Meow.
Right, that's where I am.
You don't have this.
Right there with you.
So
All right,
Mine's negative 8 inches.
Slowly.
Okay, and then you'll be able to just print me up from the bottom of the piece.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, you're seeing creep there now.
Yeah.
And I guess we're
Marshmallow
gonna
creep.
insert these
Yep.
parts into the other format. But I mean, I think what I
Oh, I
have
don't
here
care.
is all valuable.
Well, and if you're okay with that, just what I'm saying is, look and make sure where it talks about rationale,
Yeah.
you kind of put attention to some of those questions, because that's what, I don't care what the format is, just so you address the that's cool, I'm fine with that. Just so everybody can draw from it if they needed to. You guys are quick.
Right, that's what.
I'm putting antennas on $8.
If I had it all to do over again, there would be no
Well, and that's,
So maybe you felt rushed at the beginning. Everybody
bit.
was getting their materials, and
a little bit.
you wanted.
But not
the
really. I
plans
mean, more I didn't want to salt me here at 6 o'clock.
Well, in the newspaper building structure
Right.
in the lesson talks about having them work for 20 minutes working with the materials, and then they take them away and get a whole new set of materials.
right.
And then they can run with it. So,
Well, and I think.
we could do that if you want to do that.
You know,
We have time if you wanna.
see, in the
Just start on
design, isn't, in the design process, that's a pretty, I mean, that's what it is.
Wanna take a
If
stab?
we've got the time, I mean.
We got the time.
So I'm gonna.
I mean, I was gonna give you 10, 15 minutes anyway.
I'm gonna go with iteration 2.
I say.
I was thinking for one day, just same format.
I like it, like, I'm speaking curriculum wise now, I like it when you get a chance
There are a
for
lot of
students
discrepancies.
to improve their design.
Well, that's the design process.
Right, exactly, otherwise you're just doing, you're not doing full design.
Feedback or
If you
redesign,
don't,
you know,
if
like
you don't
the
have
whole-
some kind of iteration,
Exactly.
even if it's in the,
Yeah, you can apply that to every.
And that's what learn is, you know, that's what.
you'll have, in your email, complete set of plans, lesson plans for next week, probably tomorrow, but it might be Sunday. That's unless that's.
So is Daniel the winner?
If there's a time.
I'm at
we
Monday,
need to do it.
so I'm pretty much done.
Do you think the fee papers are?
I think his is the only one that.
I'm out.
Except that one.
I am.
Well, yeah. Mostly,
And why would we?
They've got,
I kinda
they're
wrestled
several
with the budget,
assessments, which
but I
can be narrative
figured,
wisdom, which I
You
guess,
know,
annual,
the budget
There you
was
go.
any bigger,
Unless you're having.
Shalon's almost
you
Great.
you
It
wouldn't
slowly
be
goes
able
because
to,
the marshmallow.
But they got two
You can't make
others that.
Well, there's,
you wouldn't be able to build it
But
much
you said it's
higher
made the
anyway.
tallest tower.
well, you wouldn't be able to open this fire anyway.
Oh,
So
that
the
was
whole thing
changes.
is-
Yeah.
They also got-
They also got
You know, if you run out.
I mean, it's supposed to be flexible, so the wind,
You know,
but not like, you know.
to be able to
I don't think it's supposed to be an elevator.
put a limit on it, you can't.
Okay.
Where's That's all you can do.
So 10 minutes, and we'll talk about the challenges, how you planned, if you wanted a bigger budget, we'll talk about those things.
Thank
10
you.
minutes, okay?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hey, I got plenty of candy too, so we can really get this kid sugared up before they go home. I'm saying 7 period, sugar them up and then kick them
Oh,
out.
that's, yeah, 7. I was like, I don't know about the rest of the classes.
Hard treat.
Say, give them checks, have them have some means of being accountable.
When we do it, when we did it last time, we eventually evolved a pretty dang good
Really?
system.
Mine, like-
They have purchase orders, they have to fill out, they have to be stapled to their materials bags.
Right.
And then, like, if they change things, they need to make, you need to make it an additional transaction on the purchase order, and then
Oh, no kidding.
they get audited for.
Change order.
They
They had
get,
to do a change
right,
order.
they get
Absolutely.
audited, and if they are over what they say that they've purchased, and they can't account for it in trade with another team or salvage from the salvage yard, then they get fined. They get fined $200 off their budget.
That's a hoot, man.
And they were pretty good. I only audited three teams, but it was, I mean, I always kind of keep an eye. It was always.
You have, you know, that's the big thing, man.
Did they have to get 6 levels of signatures before they could get in?
No.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's not no true love. That's a hoot, man.
We started it with the purchase order thing because they could put in their purchase orders with us, and then we could fill their orders, overnight. Because I don't like
Oh, I
giving
see.
a
That's-
materials kit
That's a good
because
idea.
then there's excess, right? But
Absolutely.
I also don't want them to just say, "Oh, I want all this stuff."
So everything was in their bag the next day.
The
This
next
is
day,
what
so
you
that's where
bought.
we started.
Cool.
That's where we started, and then that got tiresome.
I was gonna say that. I
So
was
we
gonna
thought
say
about
that's something you had to do with 2 teams
Right.
because it would get old.
So we thought about having the students do it, and then we're like having a designated student fill all the orders. That's kind of a burden. And well, let's just let the teams fill their own orders and let them know that they got to be accurate. And if they're not accurate,
You get a whole, exactly.
you'll suffer.
Well, and that, I think that's.
And not your grade, but your budget,
But
right?
your budget, exactly. Yeah, that's cool. That's a good idea.
Guys, if I'm the only one still fiddling with it, we can stop and move on. We really, really can.
Redesigning?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can redesign if you want,
No, it's-
but they gave you.
I'm happy with what
Or you
No,
want to
I
talk
just
before you
think, I don't
resign?
care.
I think it looks like
Go ahead.
So
I'm the
Daniel's
only
the way it
really
is?
one.
I thought we were starting. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
I misunderstood.
Well, it's just so pretty.
Good job. I got a picture.
I took some. So what were some challenges?
Easy,
Stability
skinny,
at the bottom.
skinny,
Really
skinny.
big, yeah.
Needed a wider base.
I'm wondering if I had angled mine, instead of going square up, I was gonna go angled.
Getting the spaghetti to stick into the styrofoam without breaking was.
Yeah.
When I first started thinking about this, I thought I'm going to go to the bottom, but I didn't hear it. For more base.
Yeah.
Just to stabilize, that makes
There
more
are
sense.
stabilizers.
That's actually your damper.
Well, I noticed that the taller you want to get, the less you have to spend on marshmallows. You have to be careful how many you use and where. I think I figured out the minimum number of marshmallows I could use, that I did use was 12.
Or would it be more advantageous to go without a base and put that money towards other materials?
Yeah, I guess you could. I thought we kind of had
Without a base.
a foundation.
All your basic.
Yeah, because that was
Straight on the
55
table.
cents out of your 375.
Yeah, I didn't even think of not using it.
That's what my reiteration, if I can reiterate, is about.
The numbers weren't strong enough.
Very brittle.
But it only gives you 5 extra pieces of spaghetti.
It's not about the spaghetti, it's about the width of the base and the fact that that hard insertion into the styrofoam is where it, like when mine broke, that's where it broke. It's at the base because it was too constrained. I'm not saying it's the right answer, I'm just saying it's.
Mine did the same thing.
Possibility.
Mine did the same.
Well, and
So
having a
square.
wider base like this, you're gonna, be more stable as you go up.
What it is, then but you get to that second tier, and if you
Yeah.
close it down again, you're still back into the same, you're
It
at
has
the
to
mercy
be
of the
very
spaghetti.
linear.
And
Yeah.
that's what, and they
And what
point
about-
out that a 3 is much stronger than.
Instead of a 4.
But I really like how you have the cross beams, I think that
Yeah.
adds.
That actually is what brought it back up straight. Because that center one, like,
I had some classmates having mine.
Because you may not think, oh, I need to break them.
oh, you mean my horizontal ones or the one?
The horizontal,
I'm
yeah.
talking about the ones vertical, but yeah.
Well, I think
If you're thinking higher, if you're thinking, oh, I can't break them, I've got to go straight up.
Right. But, and too, I think when you start talking to kids about structures and structural strength, and as we've talked about before, different shapes are stronger, and why are they stronger, and the whole thing with the tube deal, circles and triangles and all that. That's real, kids get that when you show them little stuff like this. They all of a sudden go, oh, I get it, it makes sense. So when you move into 7th grade and they make a Warren truss and they see all these triangles, they kind of get why, So, just one of those, you live and learn. But it is a good activity. It's, check and make sure nobody rips you off. Jeremy was sharing his deal about, they fill out when you were out.
Yeah, the third iteration will just have no budget.
Well, yeah, yeah, like the government. But he was, yeah, exactly. He was sharing that he had them fill out purchase orders before. Evidently, they had to draw it out, and obviously had planned. Then they filled out purchase orders and they turned it in, and then they filled the order overnight. Well, that means for being here till 6. But in your classroom teaching, it adds on to your planning. If you have 4 classes that are doing the spaghetti thing,
Yeah, it's 100.
it's a lot of orders to fill. So
Teams help with that, but it's still a lot of doing.
yeah, it's a lot of doing. Well, and the bottom line with what you're going to find out in this 8 class periods is this: activities are work. I don't care what anybody says. If you're doing an activity-based, lab-based class, it's a lot more work than a lot of teachers have to do. Now, don't get me wrong, the language arts teachers are taking stuff home and grading it, and I get that. But when you got somebody that's itching to build something, and he's asked you 35 times for another piece of spaghetti, and you've got to put out a fire in the corner for some reason, it can get pretty trying. Now, and then, like I say, your assessment of this, Steve, how would you, or have you not got
Develop
yet?
a rubric.
I mean, what would you have? I mean, the easiest assessment is to say, okay, who used the least amount of money and whose is the tallest? But what happens is somebody is 2 inches taller than someone else, because you're not really in a rubric world, you're not really caring how it looks. But I mean, they say,
Well, if they put in advertent planning and thought,
but they would have had to plan to win. You'd had to have something to look at. You'd have, if you put them in pairs, you'd have to have drawings and their whatever they brought to the, you know what I mean? Whatever they brought to the table to show you before they, before they started.
well, and I wonder, if this is best to be a two-person project or a three-person, because with just two hands.
Well, I think it is. Well, and I think the reason that I think it is in the whole, cooperative learning kind of thing, everybody has their own experiences that they're drawing from. So there might be somebody that's already hip to triangles that catches on that concept quite quickly, and
So then we just build 5 of these and just kind of go up stack.
but I think I would have them draw something first, so they just didn't randomly.
Telling them to plan it out isn't enough.
No, yeah,
You need to draw it out.
You need to draw it. Well, you're going to draw it out, and then they can figure their budget quickly. They can say, look, this is we got a marshmallow here, we got a stick here, we got,
Which piece is most valuable?
But I think that
You're
it's.
gonna have some critical thinking. What are the pricing? What can we get for
Yeah,
each one?
and then like I say, at the end, make some sort of a who's got the. If you do it in groups, I think 2 or 3 probably the max. I think 2 would probably be the best. But I think then to say, who's ever's the tallest, you offer some kind of a minuscule. Gee, you can win the
You get the leftover.
Tower Award. Yeah, you get.
Here's that mark.
You get to pummel somebody. The shortest
There would be
teams
cans of
with marshmallows.
Yeah, I'm diabetic.
What do you got there? You got something from that?
So I think the other thing you can do is to minimize the impact of the performance aspect on the actual grading. Like when I'm not saying this is the right answer, but last semester when we did one of these projects, they would have to do a brainstorm, a design. Those things were actually the most valuable. They would have to test. That was worth a few points, and then they had to write as a reflection, which was almost as valuable as the brainstorm and design put together. And so you create a system where it's the engineering of it rather than the building that matters.
Well, in the whole circle of the design process, I mean, that's what that's all about. When they find out why it failed, then let them redesign it. So you might say in this, they get, the first time they do it, they only get 10 minutes. The second time they do it, they get 14 minutes or whatever, or maybe don't give 10, maybe just depending upon what your class periods are. But in that regard, give them a few minutes to learn the material. I mean, even though they've all eaten 1,000 marshmallows.
And maybe do a demo of what you might do. But I feel like
Be careful.
anytime you show them something, they just immediately
Just do what you
repeat
do.
Do that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. You can learn quickly because, if yours was real big and went real fast, then. But unless you did this, I had I don't know, middle school kids. At one point, I had them every 4.5 weeks. I got a new set of kids. It was a rotation thing, and then they went over to the other industrial tech guy. What I did when I showed certain stuff like this in activities is I might take 5 or 6 pictures and quickly show them the 5 or 6. Don't dwell on them, but whatever they grab a piece of in their mind, that might not be so bad, And but to be able to, to be able to give them some idea, particularly if they don't have a lot to draw from. If you haven't gone through, structural strength much more much with it. You can tell who's eating some s'mores over there, huh? He's had it.
How do I take that, John? Are you talking about this?
No. Hey, far be it from me to judge, my friend. Let me tell you.
I don't know if I ever know.
So the center marshmallows would be the center steel dishes opposite of the
No, that's a
to-
concrete column model, right? You know, the one in Kuala Lumpur, it has concrete vertical members. It's just these giant piles of concrete.
No.
Are there classes that are longer than 50 minutes?
Depends, block scheduling could be
Yeah.
84 minutes, 85 minutes. You know, and that's, in particular, when you take block scheduling, that's the reason I was talking about on here, about having 2 or 3 different
But technology would be able to block schedule?
absolutely. Transitioning, what the problem could be is,
Elevator.
Oh, yeah.
you'd have to, you need to figure 84 minutes.
It's a design feature. It slowly lowers the upper floor.
You know, if you were doing like a real traditional lab thing, that would be one thing, but if it did, it's
I
good and
think it's
bad.
broken yet.
You know, for activities that, you know, kids are really making some serious projects. They're building CO2 cars, they're saying they're working on stuff. 84 minutes is great, but when you have middle school kids, that all the data says that if you don't change your activity, if you lecture for more than 15 minutes with middle school kids, 50% of them are lost unless they're extremely interested. So maybe you lecture a little bit, you go into some sort of PowerPoint video, something to reinforce what you've done, then maybe you have them do some kind of activity that reinforces it, then you do some kind of a mini assessment of whether it's on paper, whether it's verbal, whether it's they ask each other questions, anything to that. But in middle school, you'll lose them quick. And once you've lost a group, buddy,
Where do I expect to see a flood of crews?
you've lost a group. Stevens, the wheels ever fallen off for you and
Oh,
Miss Nick?
sure.
Isn't that fun?
No.
Wheels fall off for everybody, don't they?
Yeah.
Once?
Well, yeah, they do.
Fall off about once a day, it seems like. No, that's not true. But once a
Well,
week we have.
do you have a class that's worse than the
Yes.
other?
Yeah, I mean, so you work with them now, but fourth period is the
How'd that
smartest, the smartest bunch, because that's when I have to go over there.
Right, I got you.
And they also, so in our presentation we talked last year, my trio talked about procedural versus substantive engagement. Fourth period is just brimming with substantive engagement. They are into what's going on in this class, and they have no idea how to do it.
Right.
And now Mr. Langford's working with them, so he can tell you more about what fourth is like these days. Now
Is
see,
it awesome?
that's state.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta have the horizontal element.
Well, it's not just the horror that you're
Right.
working against torsion with these.
Right.
All that kind of trust.
Yeah, it's very balanced.
Yeah, they could sit outside overnight, probably.
Not in this neighborhood.
Well, not down there with me either. There's
Squirrels, right?
some coyotes that have been. It's funny. I had 3 big pork loins out in my freezer in the barn.
That looks more like Gaudi or something.
Coyotes found them, buddy.
Got into the In the freezer?
Well, the freeze, you know, the barn burnt. So they, you know, and I didn't. The insurance people are still going back and forth, and they still got people going out, and they're taking. You know, I've turned in a list of what I lost. They're taking pictures and da da da. Well,
I had four.
I said,
What's that?
I said I had 4 pork loins in the freezer, and they started laughing at
Yeah,
me.
but you couldn't do
And,
that. You
And
couldn't do that.
ultimately, though, like I say, there was a coyote that was in there last night. Big old footprints. I mean, you could tell it was definitely a little sand from around down the lane there. He's gone, and it's what it is, and he's gnawing on frozen pork loins out there. One of them. What was funny is maybe ½ inch of it was cooked from the fire.
10 cents on the.
Yeah, it had been.
Oh, no, 365.
Pre-cooked.
Yeah, well, yeah, I tell you what, it was smoked, all right.
When our house burned about 6 years ago, it was the refrigerator that did it. So the compressor overheated, and then the insulation caught fire and burned up the sides of the refrigerator, up to the top of the refrigerator, and then that lit off the cereal boxes. And from there it was
Okay.
on, you know. And yeah, when we opened up the freezer, either checking out what was gone, what was done, we found that out. There was this horrible smell of, like, we were basically roasted pork, and because we had a bunch of pork going in there, and burnt polyethylene.
I tell you what was bad, this refrigerator and freezer in that barn was new, but my buddy had a bunch of bluegill in it. I got it from him. He had a bunch of bluegill in there, and he had, it was on a ground fault plug. He went out of town for the weekend, the plug trip. He didn't know for a week that plug had tripped, so when he opened the freezer, he said, I said, John, what'd you do? He said, well, as soon as I opened it, I threw up. and then he ended up giving it to me. He said, I've done everything. I've cleaned the bleach, I won't clean. I said, okay. So I took it. I thought, well, I'll put it in the barn. I can use the refrigerator piece. It's not funky. So, boy, it was just nasty. So I took toothpaste. I went and got 2 or 3 big rolls of toothpaste, and I put them on a brush, and I scrubbed the inside of it, and I left it like overnight on there, and it got into the plastic enough that I rinsed it out. It had hardly smell, and I don't know what the heck made me do that. Some old hillbilly woman told me that would work. Isn't it funny how it is? But at any rate,
Just throw a big box of Arm & Hammer.
but well, he did that. He took the Arm & Hammer. He said, man, I put that out. I saw a guy like this, on there. But anyway, it worked out. They go, do you have a receipt for it? No. We got it for free because it's not so bad.
No, but it's there.
That's what they're asking for receipts for everything. I said, I got some.